How's it going, Coach?
Hey man, how you doing?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Thank you. Good, good. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you on. Great to have you on. You already know what I think of you. I think very highly of you. Big influence on my work. So great to see you. Great to see you.
I appreciate that, man. I'm sorry, man. I'm from Philadelphia, so I'm on East Coast time. And
Okay.
like I was just like moving around doing things today because I just found out that we have a press conference. So I went to go grab me some clothes and I just completely lost track of time, man. I have no
No worries.
excuses. That's the truth. I totally just apologize, man.
No,
When I
that's
saw
cool.
when I saw your message, I was like, oh shit, that's right. Because every day I got something to do, and today
Yeah.
I just totally just lost my mind after I got called about because we got to fly out to New York for the press conference, man. So I appreciate you still having me
No,
on.
I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to come onto this podcast. I've got a lot of things to ask you. I'm hoping it's a little bit different to your usual sort of interview. Um,
Can you see me?
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah.
Okay.
So I want to take it back to your nickname of the Breadman. I know why you got it, but I'm sure a lot of people watching this probably won't know how you got the nickname, the Breadman. So why don't you tell us how you got that nickname?
Okay. There's a movie called Cornbread Earl and Me. It's about a really good basketball player. So I was good. I don't like to say great or whatever, but I was really good for the level that I was on. And so the first practice of the season, I probably hit like 13 3-pointers. And so they start giving out nicknames. And then a really good friend of mine who was probably a little better than me, he said, man, we're going to call you Cornbread. And when they just started calling me Cornbread, and then as I got older, I started gambling and things like that, started making money. So they just dropped the corn and just start saying bread. So people think it's from boxing, but that's really how the nickname came about.
Okay. So you mentioned the basketball. So you used to play basketball, and injury made you turn to boxing, was it?
Yeah, I dislocated my knee. I dislocated my knee twice. I always was a big boxing fan, and I dabbled and played around with it as a kid. But then after I got out of high school, I was in college, and like the knee just was like it was like a mental thing. It wasn't so much physical, but it was more like a mental thing. But in basketball, in boxing, you don't get knee injuries like that in boxing. So I just I was like still in shape. I still I felt like that I just had like some athletic energy to let off. And so I just decided to get into boxing.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've heard I'm sure Eddie Fudge say that he thought the lateral movement in basketball translated very well to boxing. So it's quite
I
interesting.
could believe that, but the thing about it is that you don't suffer the same injuries. You do have a lot of lateral movement in boxing, but it's different as far as injuries that you suffer. Like you don't see too many boxers suffer the kind of injuries that I'm talking about. As far as as far as basketball is concerned. Like basketball is a lot of ACL injury and things like that. I'm not saying a boxer can't tear their ACL, but it won't be because of basketball. It won't be because of boxing. So, that's really what it was. I don't know, man. It's just my knee just popped out, man. It was like crazy. The doctor told me that my quads, the outside part of my quads was stronger than the inside part of my quads.
Okay.
And I just made a move and it just popped out. And I was like, damn. So it kind of like messed with me a little bit mentally.
Yeah.
And I'm 6'3". So I was going to the gym and it was like 155, 160 pounds. So I was boxing guys like this big, man. So I was like getting the better of them and stuff in the gym. It's pretty cool, and that's just how it started. Like I just wanted to like keep doing stuff like, athletically.
Yeah. Before we go on to the next question, I was reading your mailbag on Monday because I wanted to see what your prediction was for the AJ versus Usyk fight. And then there was no question. And I got to the end and you mentioned no one asked you about the fight. So what I want to ask is your opinion of how the fight played out.
I thought AJ fought a good fight.
Yeah.
He was trying some other things. He made a concerted effort to go to the body. Usyk is just a better fighter. You know,
Yeah,
sometimes you just got to tip your hat to the other guy. And, you know,
exactly.
he's just a better fighter. He has more stamina. He's more agile. He processes quicker. He thinks faster. Um, Even though AJ's bigger, Usyk's the puncher when they fight because AJ, his punches bother AJ more than AJ's punches bother him.
Yeah,
He's just a better fighter. You know, I thought AJ fought better than he did in the first fight. He just
yeah,
can't beat him. You know, whatever game level he rises to, Usyk just becomes a little bit better. Just
yeah,
sometimes it's just how it is, man. You just got to tip your hat to the other guy. You know, I don't think there's any trainers blame. You know, they switched trainers and did all of these different things. Usyk can just go at a pace that AJ can't go at. He can just take the game to another level, and AJ's body, he just can't go there. And he can hurt Usyk, but he can't hurt him to a point where he can get him out of his game plan. You know what I mean? All punches hurt, but he can't hurt him in a way where it can make Usyk stop doing the things that he wants to do. So he just can't beat the man.
yeah. I mean, it's quite interesting as well because a little while ago, when AJ was, the room was looking for a new trainer, your name was coming up. From what I was reading, quite a few were suggesting that the Breadman should be Andy Josh's new coach. I mean, personally, I think that's a good fit because I think there's something with yourself. You sort of you can bridge the gap in this. It's sort of like an age sort of culture sort of thing, as in the generation. You can relate to the younger people, I feel, because of the way you talk and your knowledge as well. And I think fighters like AJ maybe need that as well. It's not just a friend; it's a father figure as well. So I think we've been a good fit. But you know, Robert Garcia is a great coach as well. But yeah, I
I
thought.
mean, listen, I've never applied for a job in boxing. If I got offered the job, I take it. But I've never applied for a job. Well, he picked a great coach in Robert Garcia.
Yeah,
I would have been happy to take the job if we could have worked out a deal. But I never got offered the job directly from him. You know, my name was just coming up as recommendations. But I would never. Robert Garcia is a Hall of Fame coach.
yeah.
But it's just now
It's like,
as a competitor, you know, you always think it's some things that you could have done, you know, to get the guy to win in the fight. You know, I think it's some things that he could have done, but I would never critique the other coach because I don't know if they were telling him those things. Me thinking about things that I could do and him actually executing it and implying it is different. You know what I mean? So Robert Garcia could have been wanting him to do certain things that Usyk just didn't allow. So,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
don't know.
and yeah, I thought AJ, as you said, he fought a good fight, but Usyk was just a better boxer. And also, you said in the past, George Foreman has as well, that the ideal size for heavyweight, which is pretty similar to what Usyk actually is. And now he's kind of proven that true because a little while ago, some of these super heavyweights are saying Mike Tyson, that would be too small for me, but Usyk would have proved that the ideal sort of size.
They don't have the stamina. They just don't have the stamina. I don't know why anybody even argues with that. All of them have lost to smaller guys. Klitschko lost to Chris Bird.
Yeah.
Right? Lennox Lewis lost to Rockman and McCall. Both of those guys are 6'2". They're both 6'2". Riddick Bowe lost to Holyfield. Vladimir lost to a bunch of little guys. You know, like, I don't even know why anybody even argues with that. I'm not even trying to be funny. Like, they just don't have the stamina. They don't. But Deontay Wilder was much better at 215 pounds than he was at 230 something pounds.
Yeah.
If the smaller guy can take the shots, the bigger. I've been in the gym with heavyweights. They don't have the lung capacity and the stamina to go. They just don't. A guy 245, 250 pounds, they're lugging around too much. Every once in a while, you'll find an exceptional one.
Yeah.
But if he goes up against a guy like Usyk or whatever, they just don't have the stamina. And when you're tired, it freaks you out. It's like somebody putting a pillow over your face. Joshua was in shape, but his body doesn't recover as fast. So when Usyk starts to step it up and starts going in and out with the rhythm, he can't handle that. If you guys go to the gym, if a middleweight don't try to knock a lightweight out, he runs him around the ring because he's moving around less fast. So he's able to do certain things to him. That's why when Pacquiao and Mayweather moved up and they at 147, they beating all of those bigger guys. If those guys couldn't hurt them, it's hard for them to beat them because they don't have the stamina to deal with it. Smaller people have less maintenance with their body as far as oxygen getting through their body. So therefore, they have better stamina in general. Obviously, there's some exceptions to the rules, but in this case, all you need is 6'3", 220 pounds, man. That's it. If you got a chin, that's all you need.
Definitely. I agree with you there. Well, let's just take it back then. So you got injured in basketball, you turned to boxing. I mean, when did you know you wanted to become a coach in boxing, and who was it that sort of mentored you at the beginning?
You know what's funny? I when I started boxing, I was messing around in the gym. I was sparring a lot. I was doing like little exhibitions and stuff like that. But I'm not saying I wanted to like be a great professional. I was just doing it like more of a hobby. I was like 18, 19, 20 years old, and I was in college. So as some time went on, around maybe 32 or 33, I started talking to a guy named John Chavez. I don't know where this guy is, but he was a good guy. And I was telling him, like, man, I just want to get involved in boxing, you know? And then I became friends with Greg Leone, who owns boxingtalk.com.
Okay.
And I started doing a mailbag for the mailbag. And at that same exact time, Julian Williams told me I need some help. I'm turning pro. Because I had known him before and I used to go to his Golden Gloves fights, but I wasn't working with him.
Okay.
And I had a party for Mayweather and Hatton. And he came to the party and we were talking. And then maybe a year and a half, 2 years went past, and he was like, man, I want to turn pro. I'm tired of the amateur system. You know, I need some help. And then I said, okay, I'm gonna help you. And then it just went. And then, you know, things went off from there.
So who was it sort of helped you with your not boxing knowledge as a coach in that time?
I already had a whole lot of boxing knowledge. I'm not trying to like, but I did. Like, I always been like a student of the sweet science. I always stayed close to boxing. I was even beyond a hardcore fan. Like, I always was like an encyclopedia. I always knew a lot. I was able to apply a lot of the things that I knew to just, you know, going to the gym and stuff. But obviously that's different than actually training fighters, you know? So when I got to the gym and I started training Julian, the gyms in Philadelphia, they weren't friendly. So like, it's not like I had like somebody to say, come here, man, and let me work with you. It wasn't like that. I had to apply the knowledge that I knew that I had already. And I had to kind of like, just like study on my own and kind of just get it on my own, to be honest. And I just learned it, you know, it just may sound corny, but I actually wrote things down. I learned how to peak fighters out. I learned how to cut weight. I watched guys, you know, the two trainers that kind of like took me under their tutelage though was Nazem Richardson and Virgil Hunter. After, you know, when I got Julian up to maybe like 7-8-0, you know, people start saying, damn, he know what he's doing. He's pretty good. So Nazem Richardson would talk to me. He didn't teach me how to train, but I learned how to like get a guy through the rounds. Like he knows how to talk you through the rounds from that 60 seconds in between time in the corner. He knows how, he's real good. So when Julian would spar his guys, I would hear little things that he said and how he gets you through the rounds. And I don't know if you can hear me at fights, but if you hear me, I learned that from Nazem. And around 2011, Virgil Hunter reached out to me and he said, I heard you were a young, good trainer, man. I wanted to say hello. He got my number from somebody and he reached out, man. And it was like, we became really, really close ever since then, man. And I really appreciate him for that, because the trainers in Philly, if I'm being honest, they didn't embrace me. You know, it was a lot of jealousy. It was a lot of things that was said. You know, I didn't have no friends in the gyms. I would come to the gym, work with my guy, and I would just leave. But I didn't let that bother me. I'm a competitive person, and I would just say, all right, I'm just gonna show y'all, you know. And in the gym that I'm in, I'm the only guy that produced a world champion besides Nazem Richardson. That's it.
Yeah,
so all of them
yeah.
all had something to say. They all wanted to be, every last one of them had something to say. Nobody wanted to talk to me. And I was good with all of that, you know? And it's funny because a lot of the guys talk about jobs later on. I just like said, all right, no problem. We'll see. And then they would say, Julian's not this and Julian. I say, he's gonna be a world champion. We're gonna see. And I proved them all wrong. And I'm not just saying that. That's 100% the truth. So when people ask me, did I know who taught me how to train? Nobody did. I learned how to train on my own. But I did have mentors who kind of like befriended me as older guys, and I was able to watch them from. Drew Hunter doesn't live in Philadelphia. Me and him would talk. We would talk shop, and we would bounce ideas off of each other. And them, I would just watch him, and I would just listen to like how he talked to his fighters, how he would stay positive, how he would get the guys through the rounds. Like he was a funny guy, man. I miss him. His guy could miss his shot, and he'll act like the shot landed just to make the guy feel good. And I'm like, man, he didn't even land that shot. And but that's the kind of guy he was. So that if I had two mentors, it would be Nazem and Virgil Hunter.
Very interesting, because it was fascinating because Philadelphia is such a hotbed of boxing knowledge. But you've always sort of struck me as a one-man army because your knowledge is so rounded in every aspect of boxing. So that explains why it is so rounded, because as you mentioned, you didn't really get the welcome you would expect.
No,
so you forced to do everything alone.
Yeah, everything alone. I learned how to do everything alone. Dieting, the conditioning, everything I did by myself. I just applied it because I ran track. I did different things, so I knew how to get myself in shape. I just knew certain things. I could read. You know what I mean? I'm not fat now. I'm 46 now, but I never let myself get out of shape. So I know how to apply my diet. I just learned everything on my own. It may sound arrogant, and I'm not trying to be. I'm just telling the honest to goodness truth. I didn't have no help from the trainers in Philadelphia. They didn't, I'm cool with a lot of them now, but back then they always had something to say. So I just was like, all right, no problem. We'll just see. We'll see where your guy is at compared to where my guys are going to be at. Just give me some time, and we'll find out.
Yeah.
So just how it is.
So is your style then of teaching, your style of coach, is it still a majority of the Philadelphia type style, or have you, because you learned it yourself, is it because have you been taken from other styles, your favorite fighters?
I take from a lot of different things, man. I take from a lot of different things. I kind of got like my own routines as far as getting the guys' footwork together, keeping your feet shoulder length apart, your feet, whatever direction you move in, that's direction, that foot goes in that direction first. Hands up, chin down, eyes up, elbows in. Like I keep my own little, a lot of things is fundamentals from when I was boxing, and then you apply it to certain guys in certain body types, and certain temperaments. You can't train everybody the same way, but the foundation is usually the same, and I've been lucky to kind of get guys with similar body types. And when you got guys with similar body types, you could do a lot of things the same.
Yeah. Kind of reminds me of Emmanuel Stewart. His fighters, Thomas Hearns, for example, John McLennan, they're all tall, lean guys, weren't they? He was having a lot of success with that style. Yeah.
If you ever noticed that guys, trainers like a guy that's a certain kind of body type. They may not say it because that would alienate other guys from coming to them, but kind of want guys that's in your frame of your body type.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. Okay, so I follow your work online, and on Instagram you post a fair bit about your children who are excelling in various athletic fields. I mean, your daughter is doing is it the 400, 200 meter running, is it?
1, 2, and 4.
Yeah, and your son's playing American football.
He plays American football. He plays basketball. He also runs track.
Okay, so as a coach yourself, I mean, how involved are you in their training?
I'm super involved.
You are,
now I'm away in camp now with Caleb Plant, but I'm involved. I go to all of their practices. I work them out like I do. They do a lot of the same workouts that the fighters do. I spend a lot of money on their equipment. Like I'm very, very involved with my kids. They got a lot of natural talent, but I've invested a lot in them. I ain't like different things that I know. And like my daughter could beat my fighters running. Like she's the real deal. So I'm very, very involved. I'm a very hands-on dad. It's hard for me to be away from my kids.
Yeah. So if your children wanted to box and you know in the business as you do, would you be for that move, supportive of it, or would you be hesitant because of your experiences?
I wouldn't let my daughter. I wouldn't let my daughter. I
Mm,
couldn't take Sarah get hit. I
yeah.
would let my son box if I felt as though he would be that disciplined and dedicated. I taught them both how to fight, but it's different than boxing. But I have a nephew who's looking to make his pro debut really soon.
Okay.
Be good. He fights out in Miami, but he's gonna come up. He might come up to Philly and train with me for a little while.
That's cool.
So to answer you, I would let my son box. So I couldn't watch my daughter box.
Mm. Yeah, but I
Yeah,
think
I couldn't.
your sound's cutting out a little
Even
bit.
her get hit. Can you hear me?
I can hear you just cutting out a little bit, and the your pictures are sort of freezing up.
Oh man. What I was saying is I couldn't see my daughter boxing. I couldn't watch her box, but I could let my son box.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I have two sons. One boxed and one is boxing. So yeah, and I have a daughter as well. So yeah, I definitely agree with your views there. So as a coach, we've gone through yeah, how you train your children as well. Are you more of a friend when you coach your fighters, or more of a father figure? How do you sort of balance the two?
Inside the gym, I'm 100% a coach. You
Mm,
know, outside the gym, you find yourself wearing many hats. You got to be a father figure. You got to be a financial advisor. You have to be a counselor. You have to be a psychologist. You know, sometimes you got to be a big brother. You got to be a lot of things. But in the gym, you know, it's no nonsense. We got to work. And that's just that. So, you know, being a boxing trainer is much more than just being a boxing trainer. You find yourself wearing a lot of different hats. So it's part of the game.
So if you were to, for any young up and coming coaches, what do you think are the three most important qualities a coach needs to be successful at his job?
Leadership, that's much more important than knowledge. You have to be
Okay.
able to lead and organize. A head coach has to be able to organize the entire team, to work out the training schedule, to have the strength and conditioning, the dieting, the sparring partners, knowing what time to be at the gym, what time to be at the track. You have to all of that falls on you, even if you're not to blame, it's all your responsibility. So you have to have leadership. You have to be able to run the camp. When sparring partners cancel and don't show up, you got to be able to compartmentalize that and get past that and move on to the next. So the best coaches aren't always the most knowledgeable guys. They're the best leaders. You got to be able to
Okay.
lead a man in the ring to be able to have him trust you with with his life in your hands. So
Yeah.
leadership is number one. To be able to articulate is number two, because a lot of people have knowledge, but they can't articulate it to somebody else. They can't teach it. They just know it. That's why sometimes the best fighters aren't always the best trainers, because
Yeah.
what they know and what they can teach is not the same thing.
Mm,
And the third thing is your knowledge and constantly getting better and acquiring new things as you go on. But leadership and ability to articulate are the number one things. If you can't articulate and you're not a leader, you can have all in the world. It's not going to matter. Nobody's going to be able to receive it from you.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because across most sports, probably even the great players, they don't really go into coaching or don't succeed as coaching when they do. Maybe because they were so good and they can't articulate how to get down to out someone else because it came maybe a little bit easier to them than the average person. Okay, all right. So that goes with my next question. When you talk about the qualities, how do you know when you see a fighter potentially want to train? How do you know when he has it? He has something that you see and you think that's it, he's got it. I could train him to be a great boxer or a world
You know
champion.
what, man? I don't believe you can explain that in words. You just got to know it when you see it. You just got to just know it. It's not something you know in words. You just look at him and say, yeah, you know what? That kid right there, he got something. You know, he has something. A lot of it has to do with potential, because what you're doing is you're making estimation of what he's going to be, not what you're seeing right then and there. But I don't believe that you can really describe that in words. Now, I'll tell you some characteristics that I look for. I look for a disciplined kid. I look for a kid that's in the gym on time every day. I look for a kid that does not talk back. You don't want to use that word with a grown man, but you don't want a kid that you tell him to do something, he starts telling you, because then he gets to a point where he starts training you on how to train him. So I want somebody that's disciplined. I want somebody that's humble. I want you to be athletic and talented, but those are not the number one things. And I also want someone who is open-minded enough to try what you're teaching them. And that comes with toughness and that comes with confidence. I want a fighter with real confidence. Some guys act like they're tough, but they don't be tough. And then some guys are really tough and they never try to show anybody. So I want a guy with real confidence and real toughness, not a guy that tries to have a fake persona and stick his chest out, have everybody scared of him. That's not the guy that I want. But as far as seeing something in a fighter, it's hard to explain with words. You just kind of just know what you're saying. Sometimes nobody else sees it. Sometimes you're the only person that sees it. And then, you know, you got to like check yourself to see if you're crazy because you see something that nobody else sees. So it's
when that happens. When that happens, though, do you become too emotionally invested in a fighter then? So then you begin to overlook some things which other people can see?
Sure, you can. You can fall in love with a fighter's ability and you can become infatuated with your best fighter and you can overlook some things. Sure, it can happen. Yes. This is the toughest job in the world because it's hard to discipline a fighter because the fighter pays you. Where in other team sports, the team pays you. So you can discipline them and you can suspend them. In boxing, the fighter pays you. So if you say the wrong thing to him, you can lose your job. So it's easy to become infatuated with a guy that, you know, you can't ever say the wrong thing to. You know, so you on thin rope with a fighter. Fortunately for me, that I say what I want to say to any fighter within a respectful way. You know, like if you're not doing the right thing, I'm going to let you know about it. But a lot of guys, they can't do that because they'll lose their job and that's their only source of income.
I mean, fortunately for you, you're the ideal size for a heavyweight.
Well, you know, man, I'm not in the shape to be fighting no guys right now. And I'm only about 200 pounds. But I just don't, you know, I'm just not going to take any crap from no fighter, man. You know, I don't need the job that bad.
You need to be headstrong, don't you, when you're dealing with people who fight for a living. Definitely.
Well, here's the thing. Naturally, by nature, they're opportunists. By nature, they're people that take things away from other people. They're not thieves, but they take your manhood. They beat you up. They look for weakness in you. So as a trainer, you can't give that off and expect a man to trust you with his life.
Definitely. All right. So let's move on to your mailbag. So you mentioned that you started a mailbag first, and then the boxing coach came around the same sort of time.
Right at the same time, yep.
Yeah. So the breaking down of fights. This is what I've picked up from you as well. I mean, where did you pick this sort of skill up, or breaking down fights, breaking down fighters? You're known for your fight predictions as well. How did that all come about? I mean, is this an extensive amount of study? Is it because you've been watching boxing for so many years?
You know what, man? You got to remember that I gambled a lot on boxing, even before I got into this. So I've been watching boxing and being around boxing my whole life. My grandfather was born in 1931. So he saw Sugar Ray Robinson live. He saw Joe Louis live. He had friends that were older than him. And I would sit on his step and we would talk about like guys like Ike Williams. I knew who Ike Williams was before I knew who Abraham Lincoln was. Wow. You know, like I knew like we sat around and we talked about a lot of different skills, how you do things like this. And like I would like be fighting with my cousins and the little kids outside, and they would show me how to catch and parry and things like that. So I always had a vast knowledge of boxing. Like even as a kid, I was good at predicting fights. Like I would have all my buddies over who they weren't into boxing like me. They played basketball and football. But when it would be a big boxing match come on, like I would have all my buddies over and we would watch all the pay-per-view fights at my house and I would tell them who was going to win. And as you get older, obviously your eyes get better and then the more experience you are around the game, you do. But I always was good at that. I always could break down fights. I always was just good at just like observing a human being and knowing what he's good at and what he's bad at and looking at different things. And from the streets, you kind of know, who's a fraud, who's not a fraud, who's tough, who acts like they're tough. You can kind of just pick up on different things about different people. So I just think it just comes from just various different things, but my ability to retain information and watch things and know, and like when I pick up on certain things, I never forget them. I think that's what it really comes from.
Yeah, it sounds like the coach is a perfect role for yourself, isn't it? I mean, people ask me, how do you study fights? And sometimes I've just said to them, go read the Breadman's mailbag. There's been times I've read it like for hours or more, just searching through them all one after another, because you pick up so much information from them which you can apply. Yeah, lots of gems in there. Okay, so sticking with your mailbag and your all-round boxing knowledge. So these things you've mentioned about, street smarts and other stuff. Do you read books on mindset, or picking up body language? To cover this all-round knowledge you've got, was there other areas you sort of focused on?
I grew up in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, man. So like, and I didn't grow up in a nice neighborhood. I grew up in a place where it was a tough neighborhood. I went to a high school with 3,500 kids in the same school of all different races and religions. So like, it's a lot of things you got to pick up on. Like playing basketball. Like, it's been times where I went to different neighborhoods and played basketball, and they threatened to kill me from having good games. Literally, wow. I'm not exaggerating. They threatened to kill me when I get off the court. And so I'm so like used to things like that, where it may sound like I'm over embellishing, but it's like, it's not really a big deal to me. I'm just used to it. I'm used to walking down the street like, oh shit, that guy over there, man, he probably got a gun. He gonna try to rob us. I'm used to being in those kind of situations throughout my childhood. So like, it's probably not a good thing, but it helped me later on in my life, because my children won't have this knowledge because they didn't grow up like me. But I grew up in a place where you had to have that to be able to survive. I grew up in a I didn't know my neighborhood was bad until I got older and made money. And was like, damn, man, I grew up around all of this. I didn't even know it. It was just part of life. It was part of life. I would walk up on a corner. My best friend loved basketball like I did. We would get up 7 o'clock in the morning to go play basketball, and there would be a bunch of drug addicts walking around. And we didn't care. We just wanted to go play basketball. So like, it's just how it is. Like, I can't really explain it, but I guess I had the ability to apply different things that I learned, where a lot of guys, they just know these things, but they can't apply it to any part of their life that make their life better.
Yeah,
maybe.
So Will Smith was online about when he went to Bel Air, because he got in one little fight. His mum got scared. That was quite a regular occurrence then in Philadelphia.
It was a regular occurrence in my life. It was.
Which part of Philadelphia are you from then?
Excuse me?
Which part of Philadelphia are you from? Which part of
Philadelphia? I was born in West Philadelphia.
Oh, same as the Fresh Prince song then, in West Philadelphia.
Actually, he went to Overbrook High School. My mom and all her brothers and sisters went to Overbrook High School.
Oh, wow.
And Julian J. Rock Williams went to Overbrook High School. But I didn't go to Overbrook High School. When my family, my grandparents still lived in West Philly, but I moved up to an area called Uptown, up Broad Island, which was just as bad. So I would always go down to see my grandparents on the weekends, but I lived in the area called Broad Island, which is the Uptown section of Philadelphia. So it's about maybe 20 minutes from West Philly.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, all I knew about Philadelphia was the Philadelphia Eagles and Reggie White, Jerome Brown, and those boys kept beating my Redskins.
Okay. Jerome Brown was a great player, man. It's a shame. Well, him and Reggie White passed away, man. It's crazy.
Yeah. That was a great defense out in the 90s with Buddy Ryan, didn't they?
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you find as the most challenging aspects of being a coach? For example, you touched upon being headstrong because of the fighter's ego. So what do you find most challenging being a coach?
Two things. One, the logistics of boxing, where like if you have a guy that doesn't have any money behind him and he doesn't have like a promoter who thinks highly of him, he won't get a lot of work, and he'll always be getting called for fights on short notice that he can't really win or doesn't have time to prepare for. So the politics of boxing is tough. The tough part about training certain fighters is that you have to act like a parental figure. That's why I never say that father-son teams don't work, because you have to act like a parental figure for somebody who you didn't raise. And a lot of fighters, you know, quite frankly, they weren't raised right. They don't have the morals. They don't know how to show attribution. They don't know how to show gratitude. They have entitlement issues. They don't understand that if they ask someone for money, as far as an investor, a promoter, a manager, then that person wants their money back. They want a return on their investment. So fighters kind of think that everybody's out to get them. So they ask for things, and those things that they ask for, they never, ever want to give back. You could go to a store or a restaurant with a fighter, they'll let you spend all of their money, but won't ever pull out their wallet. So sometimes fighters, I don't want to say they have low character, but they have indifferent character. So as a trainer, you have to teach them things like, listen, man, I'm your trainer. You can't curse at me. You can't say certain things to me that you can say to your friends. You can't, when you come in the gym, you got to come in the gym and you got to get ready to work. You can't come in the gym talking on the phone and sitting out in the car and doing all of these different things, So a lot of times fighters, they have indifferent character, and unfortunately, not really unfortunately, that's why I just can't train any kind of fighter. And it's not just a talent. You have to be like a good person. I don't care if you come from a tough background, but you have to be a good person. And a lot of fighters, man, a lot of fighters have these victim stories about different things that people have done to them. But I'm telling you that the money that people have lost on fighters trying to be good to fighters and trying to, because it's hard for a lot of fighters to work regular jobs. So a lot of times they need managers or somebody to take care of them. The money that a lot of these guys have taken and not paying out as far as being a good return on the investment, people have lost in the billions. And the fighter won't tell you that part. They'll just tell you the part about how, everybody is taking advantage of them and everybody wants something from them. But so to answer you directly, the low character of a fighter or indifferent character of fighters is the hardest thing, because you have to be a parent to a lot of these fighters. You have to tell them, don't talk back. You have to tell them, stop cursing at you. Because these are tough men. They grew up in tough places. So you have to do all of these things while you're training them, so that to me has been like the toughest part. I just can't train anybody. If you're not a good kid, I don't want to train you.
So someone like myself, and I'm sure there's a lot of pro coaches that just started in the game, what's the biggest red flags then to watch out for in a fighter where you would say stay well clear?
A fighter who's constantly switching trainers, a fighter who every time you tell him something, he's always questioning everything you tell him. Those are the biggest red flags. Every time you tell him something, he already knows another way to do it. And one that's always switching trainers. He's always thinking about what some other guys are doing. Those guys, those are red flag guys for me.
Lack of focus, that is definitely there.
Yep.
So what would you most like to change in boxing then?
What would I most like to change in boxing? I would say the platforms of the fighters. I think that overall, like the top fighters are just too inactive. I read somewhere, I think Steve Kim said this, I'm not sure, but he said, what if your favorite restaurant served your favorite dish once every 8 or 9 months? That's how it is when you follow your favorite fighter in boxing. I think he said that. And that's how I feel like it just seems like that we just need more exposure to the guys. Like the best guys only fight. That's not even once every 6 months. It's like once every 8 months, once every 9 months. And I feel like that is just not enough.
Yeah, I mean, when I was speaking to Coach Billy Padden about some of these old school fighters, And I'm sure you mentioned Sugar Robinson when he lost to LaMotta for the first time. He rematched him 3 weeks later, and in between he had a 10-round fight as well. So in the space of 3 weeks, he'd fought 3 times. You just wouldn't see that nowadays anymore. Okay, so about lost arts of boxing. You've done, so much of the history of boxing, so much of the sweet science, and you studied so many fights. What are the lost arts of boxing which you would like to bring back to the sport, which you feel aren't being used enough?
Infighting. A lot of guys clinch on the inside now instead of fighting in there. Parrying punches. A lot of guys catch and counter, but a lot of guys don't really parry punches too much. I kind of wish it was still 15-round fights.
I guess that would be tough, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but for medical reasons, I feel like I feel like that they'll never do that again. But I do wish I wish if Crawford and Spence do fight, I think that they're so good and they're so unique in their ability that that 12 rounds is not enough for those two guys. I think it should be 15 rounds. Those are the 3 things that come to mind right now.
Yeah. I missed the question earlier as well. So I noticed in your mailbag as well, you make a lot of sporting analogies across sports. For example, you equate a boxer's style with a basketball player. I know you played basketball. Do you follow a number of sports on a deep level?
I'm a big football fan, a big basketball fan.
So when you say football, that's American football.
American football. I'm sorry. Yes, I forgot. Yeah, American football. I follow track and field, and I'm like historic with baseball. Like I don't watch as much baseball as I used to, but I'm like historic with baseball. I would say that my knowledge is like historical baseball, basketball, American football, track and field, and boxing.
Okay, so
I kind of follow everything. Yeah.
All right, so then you sort of mesh that knowledge together when you're sort of equating. Yeah.
Because a lot of the workouts apply, long distance running, sprinting, all of those different things, agility drills. You'd be surprised how a lot of things apply to being able to get a boxer in shape.
So when you mentioned the other question about the lost arts of boxing, the infighting, so who would you recommend studying? I mean, I know guys probably think of Tony, Duran, Henry Armstrong. Are those the guys that you would sort of recommend studying for infighting?
That's a lot more guys than that. Believe it or not, man, you can watch Pernell Whitaker. He was great on the inside, a lot better than people realize or remember. You can watch Bernard Hopkins on the inside. He's a lot better than people realize on the inside. Not just the inside, but just standing in the mid-range. Want to watch a fight? You watch Tony and Mike McCallum. Those dudes barely clinched. Yeah. They stood right in the mid-range all night long, both of their fights, and they just went to work. You watch Julian Williams fight versus Jarrett Hurd, or watch Julian Williams versus Michael Medina. You'll see a whole lot of crafty inside stuff. Not just inside, just mid-range. Like a lot of times, guys, when they right in the mid-range, because that's the most dangerous range to be in, they'll pull out, because they don't want to be in there. There's a ton of guys, though, that you can watch in there. Eusebio Pedroza, Alexis Arguello, Donald Curry was brutal in the mid-range. Vander Holyfield, brutal in the mid-range. Lots of guys, man. I can't even name them all, but there's a lot of guys that are really good in the inside and the mid-range, man.
Yeah, I mean, Julian Williams versus Michael Medina was a fight you recommended me to study. And there was a lot of old school tricks in there. So where were you getting those from? Which fighters were you studying when teaching Julian Williams a lot of those tricks he showed in that Michael Medina fight?
You know what? A lot of that stuff applies to the gym. Like I'll see him do a move, and then right afterwards, I would say, "Man, I like that. Let's work on that." Like when he pulls and rips a guy's guard down, everybody says Lomachenko is the first guy in this era to do it, but Julian was doing that before Lomachenko was even a pro. Julian turned pro in 2010. To be totally honest, I got that move from Fernando Vargas. Fernando Vargas used to pull guys' guards down, and boom, he would pull them down. He was really, really good at it. And I'm like, man, you fight the same weight as him. Y'all similar in height, similar in dimensions. I want you to try this. Julian, if you watch a fight that he had versus Freddie Hernandez, he threw a right hand, he crossed over and came back with a hook and let his body weight all the way crossed over. I forget who I got that move from. Damn. Who did I get that crossover move from? I forget who I got that move from, but I know he does another move where he bumps a guy. He'll hit you right in the middle of your chest while you're not expecting and hit you with a right hand. He hit Jared Hurt with that move. Believe it or not, I got that move from Felix Trinidad. A lot of the inside moves on the inside, I just learned when I was fighting. If you're on the inside of a guy, you don't want to be head to head because you'll have headbutts. You want to be ear to ear. You want to be able to look over their shoulder so you hear with a guy, and then you hear with a guy, and you hear with a guy, and you hear with a guy, and it takes you offline from these shots. So if you see one of my guys on the inside, he's always ear to ear. He's able to look over the other guy's shoulder. Then he'll go from here, and then he'll go here, and then he'll go here, and then he'll go here. So it's just things that you acquire along the way, and then you just kind of learn them. It's hard to really explain, but you just acquire and you just pick up things as you go. And then if you got a good memory and you can retain everything, then you kind of just start applying it to a guy as you move along.
Okay. So apart from being a coach, you're also an entrepreneur as well. So, I mean, you trained Julian Williams to become world champion. So you're one of the coaches that has had a world champion, but majority of coaches are not going to be training world champions over the course of their career. I mean, that's just the way the average works out. So what would you advise coaches outside of coaching to sort of look into help with not just coaching, that you've got something else on the side as well, which you're working towards?
I would advise them to have a second income, whatever they enjoy. They don't have to have the same kind of second income that I had, but I would advise you to have a second income, because when you do have a second income, what it allows you to do is it allows you to be more stern with the fighters, because you're not solely dependent upon the income from that fighter. It also allows you to be able to pick and choose what jobs you take, because a lot of times a lot of times trainers are forced to take jobs because they don't have another income. But if you have a solid income, you can kind of cherry pick a little bit. You can pick the better guys that you want to work with, which is what you want, because your brand and your name is on the line when you train a fighter. So like I said, I definitely, until you can get to the point where, you're making a consistent 6 figures a year, you don't want boxing to be your sole support system, because it's too up and down.
Is this also something you help your fighters with financial advice outside of the boxing?
Yeah, I do, man, but I try not to get too involved in their financial business outside of boxing. I help them. I tell them about their taxes. I refer them to anybody that they need me to do. But I got involved with Julian outside of boxing, and I probably wish that I didn't do that, as far as telling them different things with his business, because that's good for him, the man, and that's good for him to set up his life in the future, with his family. But it takes away from boxing, because when you make so much money doing other things, you don't need boxing as much as you used to, and you lose your hunger, you lose your focus. A boxer has to be on edge, so everybody can't perform at the highest level if they're not on edge. So, what I did for him was great for him as a man and him as the person. But as a fighter, I question whether I should have got involved with helping him with different things as far as his life is concerned, because, you might not focus on boxing as hard as you used to. You know what I mean? I'm not saying he did or he didn't, but I just feel like that, if I could have did that over again, I probably would have just told him to save all his money until we got to a later part of his career, and then start investing in the buildings and things like that. Because right now he doesn't need boxing, and it shows up in small places that the fighters don't even realize. So
the old Marvin Hagler saying it's a lot harder to get out of bed at 5 a.m. in the morning when you're wearing silk pajamas. I suppose the prevalence of more money as well.
Marvin Hagler was exactly right. That's what happens. He was
Yeah.
exactly right. I'm serious. That's what happens.
Yeah.
You
So I
know,
suppose
so
you mentioned the
I,
fighters fighting like once every 8 months. That's the excessive money being thrown about as well now, as compared to,
yeah. So now I tell guys, don't blow your money, save your money, pay your taxes, but I don't overly indulge in that anymore because, they once the money comes, things change. You even eat different. You go out to dinner more, a lot of things change, women like you a little bit more. Everything changes.
Yeah. This tough one, isn't it? Because boxing, people box with the hope of a brighter future. When that brighter future comes, all of a sudden they think the drive's gone, as and the hunger is gone, which makes it more impressive for people like Hagler and Floyd Mayweather continue to work, as some people describe that they were still broke. Yeah. Okay.
100%.
So if you were to pick any three fighters in history who you could work with or be in a corner with for a particular fight, what would be those three fights or three fighters? I know you're a big Sugar Ray Leonard fan.
I am, but he won most of his big fights. I want to pick guys that probably lost that I think I could have helped.
They don't want to be in place of Angelo Dundee and doing the old "you're blowing it, son" speech.
Yeah, I mean, he won that fight, though. So how much better could I did than what Dundee did? I would say Alexis Arguello or Zan Pryor, because if Alexis Arguello wins that fight, he's the first fighter in history with 4 titles. And history will look different. He would have beat Duran to it. He'd have beat Leonard to it. He'd have beat Hearns to it. Remember, he did that in 1982. Leonard hadn't won 4 titles yet. Hearns had it. Duran had it. That would have been a huge win had Alexis Arguello had won that fight.
But was there anything you could have done differently, do you believe, for that first Arguello Pryor fight? Because Pryor just came out like a monster, didn't he, in that round where he took him out?
Well, I mean, it's always something that you can do. Pryor got off to a really, really good start, and he was rushing Arguello a little bit.
Basically, what I'm saying is, could you have beaten that bottle of water?
Let me tell you something that's funny. If you ever watch me watch a fight, I don't do a fight. I don't get in the ring. I stay on the side of the ring and I talk to the fighter in his ear and I let the cut man get in the ring. So I look over in the corner. So who knows? I don't know. I'm just saying, as a coach, you always think you could do small little things. So that would have been the fight that I would have wanted to be a part of with Arguello to see if I could help him win the title. Hearns and Hagler, I would like
who's
to work
corner?
in Hearns' corner. I'm picking guys that lost big fights. Because you said what corner I would want to work in. Hearns, because I feel like that Hearns got suckered into that chaotic kind of fight. And he just, it was like getting on a treadmill at 15 miles an hour. I felt like that if he could have boxed and held Hagler a little bit, there's no way Hagler could have kept that pace going. There's just no way he could have kept that pace going. Not at 160 pounds, the way he was winging him. I think Hagler would have ran, as great as a fighter as Hagler was, I think he would have ran out of gas a little bit. But Hearns just matched him, and he didn't have the chin or the stamina. And he was actually tired in that third round. He was fatigued because they were going so hard. So I think I would have tried to calm him down, and I would have told him, don't fight fire with fire. With fire, you put the fire out with water, and we'll get him a little bit later. Let him act all crazy right now. Just calm down and work your jab and use your legs a little bit and move around a little bit. So that might have been the fight that I would have liked to work. And let's see, you said 3. Okay, Ray Robinson versus Joey Maxim, where he was winning the fight and he passed out from heat exhaustion. I would have made sure he was hydrated the right way for that heat out there. We'd have had some salt tablets. We would have figured something out where he would have been, because the heat exhaustion beat him. He would have won the title at light heavyweight, which would have enhanced his already tremendous legacy. So I would have definitely would like to have, I would say those are the 3. There's probably some more, but I'm picking stuff off the top of my head.
Yeah. So on the back of that, who are your top 3 favorite fighters?
Sugar Ray Leonard.
Sugar Ray Leonard.
Sugar Ray Leonard. Well, I'm going to go with the guys that I've seen in my lifetime because historically I love Robinson and Ali and them. But I'm going to go with guys that I got to see at my lifetime when I knew what I was looking at. Sugar Ray Leonard is number one. Evander Holyfield is number two.
Okay.
And I would say there's a lot of guys who could come in at number three. But if you twist my arm, there's probably a roadblock with Roy Jones and Tito. I can't really pick between those two. I love both of those guys. So it would depend on what day it was.
I was almost expecting to have Pernell Whitaker in there.
I love Whitaker, but you making me narrow it down to three. Holyfield and Ray Leonard are my favorites of my lifetime, period. I love them. And then, Whitaker, Jones, Tito, there's a few other guys that all could fit in right there. I even like Gotti a lot, believe it or not. I was a big Gotti fan.
Okay. It was very entertaining, great to watch, yeah.
God, he put you on the edge of your seat, man. But I would say those three kind of guys kind of just give me the biggest thrills. Probably Tito. I love Roy Jones, but Tito was a little more thrilling as far as like for your enjoyment purposes.
Yeah. And there's a comment. It may have been you who said it. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm going back to some of those traits you mentioned, world champions. That all pro boxers have a high level of ring IQ. The best boxers, though, just process that information a split second faster than a good boxer. Is that something? Did you say that, or something you agree with?
I didn't say that all pro boxers have a high level of IQ. I said all pro boxers have some sort of IQ. But the thing that separates the boxers is the ability to process, the ability to know something is happening or see something happening and react to it the right way in a short period of time. If you watch a fight like with Zab Judah and Floyd Mayweather, Zab was probably a little faster than Floyd, but Floyd's mind thought quicker. Floyd processes a little faster. Andre Ward is like that also, where his mind processes a little bit faster. A biggest example that I can give is Derek Gainer versus Juan Manuel Marquez. That's like a fight that goes under the radar, where Gainer was really, really fast, but Marquez's mind processes faster. So Marquez beat Nick Gainer up by just thinking faster than he does, by processing faster. It's really, really hard to explain, but speed is in the body and quickness is in the mind. And how fast you react to something is not the same as how fast you do something. You understand what I'm saying? So, like, for example, if I was racing you in a race, right, and over 100 meters, you could probably, the faster person would probably win. That's how fast you get from point A to point B. But if me and you had a contest of who can react to the gun quickest, the gun when it goes off at the start of a race, that's your processing. That's your quickness, So I may be faster than you for the first couple of steps, and then your speed would take over, over time. But the best fighters, because boxing is a game of small movements, the best fighters, they process faster than 99% of the other guys. And then you got guys that are freaks, like a Floyd Mayweather or like a Roy Jones, where they have the speed and the quickness, where they're fast and they are and they have the quick processing ability in their minds.
Yeah, I feel Roy Jones Jr. doesn't actually get enough credit for his ring IQ because of his outrageous physical talents, but he was a very smart fighter. So what about one fighter off the top of your head then, who had all the skills, all the physical traits, but his ring IQ let him down and held him back from becoming a great?
Man. I don't want to say this guy, but I'm gonna.
You don't have to say it then if you don't want to. Or just drop a hint.
He fought at middleweight.
Okay.
He was a middleweight champion in the last, let me say, 20 years. He was undisputed champion.
All right. Maybe I'll put that up on Instagram. Let the guy's guest on there.
Yeah, I don't want to say, because I don't like saying bad things about fighters, and I really like this fighter, but I feel like his IQ always let him down in big moments. But he won a couple of big fights. He was the middleweight champion in the world, but it just seemed like his IQ was just like off, like he did the wrong thing at the wrong times.
Yeah, when this ends, I'll be looking through on the internet. Who is this guy? No one. So what's a typical day in the life of a coach for yourself?
Well, in Vegas, or just
Stays
like
in Vegas.
Yeah, like I'm in Vegas now training Caleb Plant. So I just come back to my condo. We get up, we train about 10:30. I come back to my condo, get me something to eat, watch some TV. Then I go to his strength or running workout at maybe like 5 o'clock, and that's pretty it. Home is a little different. I wake up, shoot basketball with my son. We do a little bit of yoga. I go to the gym with the guys. Then I go check on my properties, and then I go home, chill out, eat dinner with my wife and kids, watch movies, and then kind of rinse and repeat, do the same thing. Okay. And then, when it's my daughter's track season, I take her to track practice, which is about 6 o'clock at night. So my life is not exciting, but it's my life and I like it. So that's it.
It sounds quite peaceful. I wasn't expecting that answer. I thought it'd be, as a coach myself, it can be quite hectic, but you seem to have got it down after these years in the business. You know exactly what you're doing.
You know what, man? I don't allow myself to get ran around too much. The most hectic time to me is the first of the month when I'm picking up my money from my tenants in my building. Other than that, I don't really allow myself to get like, I'm getting grazed right here. This is all because of fighters and just wishing the best for my kids. So I'm probably under a little bit of stress, but I try to live as most peaceful life as I can, man.
Definitely. Okay, so we've got a couple of user questions as well, just relating to boxing. So one of the users has asked, I was going to get his name up as well, actually. Right, so Stephen Cooper has asked, how do you know if the stance is correct or perfect? I'm guessing this is subjective to the coach and his teachings. So maybe the question is, how do you teach the stance? What's your perfect stance?
I try to have the stance shoulder length, about a little bit more than shoulder length apart, with the lead shoulder pointed towards to the opponent. But there's some guys who like their stance a little bit wider. Those guys are usually hookers. They usually draw a lot of their power from being able to rotate, because if your feet are too wide apart, it's hard to throw the straighter punches because your feet are wide apart and you'll tip over. So a lot of times you'll see the better straight punchers have their feet up under them a little more, like Alexis Arguello and Joe Louis. Whereas the guys who are more into hooking, like Nassim Hamed and Roy Jones, their feet are a little bit wider apart, because then they kind of like can get their rotational strength. So there's no such thing as a perfect stance, but there is a perfect stance for every fighter. So I kind of like look at the stance that the guy I look at the punches that the guy likes to throw the most, and I'm not going to say this is the perfect stance, but this is kind of like the textbook stance. Lead shoulder pointed to the center of the other guy's body, hands out about right here, feet about shoulder length apart, chin down, elbows in. That's the kind of stance you want. You want your feet to you don't want your back foot to be like far east. If this is north, east, you don't want the back foot to be east. You kind of want your back foot to be like, if there's a clock right there, about maybe 1:30, understand what I'm saying? Like, you want your back foot to be pointed like right here, instead of always, sometimes you see a guy's back foot all the way out there. You don't want it back all the way out there, because then you got to rotate it too much to punch. So you kind of want it to be about 1:30. You want your front foot to be almost 12 o'clock, maybe a little bit off, maybe 12:15. And that's just that.
Okay. And Haroon asks.
Hold on, let me say one more thing. And if a guy is pressuring the guy, then I can allow his stance to be a little bit more square, because he has to kind of go laterally to cut the ring off. So he doesn't have to be bladed as much. If I got a guy that's coming forward and pressuring a guy like a Chavez or a Jeff Fennick, I can let them be a little bit more squared up, because they got to be able to slide left to right a little bit more, because they're trying to cut the ring off.
Okay. Interesting. And Haroon asks, what's a common weakness you see in fighters? and what should be done to improve this common weakness which you've seen? So is there a trait you've seen fighters which a weakness which maybe shouldn't be there, but quite a few fighters have this weakness, and what should be done to overcome it?
I say two common weaknesses that I see with fighters. One is a conditioning thing, and one is a technical thing. I'll start with the conditioning. The conditioning is I see guys after maybe 5 or 6, between 4 and 6 rounds, they get a bad drop off in energies. It's like cortisol hits in their body and they don't get a good second win. And it takes them some time to get their second win. I think that comes from panicking. That comes from not being calm in the ring. That comes from not being able to recognize it and being able to push through it in the gym. So when you get in the ring, you're okay. If you watch fights really, really closely, you'll see like the sharper guy come out, and around the 4th or 5th round, you'll notice like a drop off in him, and you're like, damn, what happened? And I think that's because after the adrenaline then like wore off and stuff, they just get a little bit flat. So I think that I see that that's very common for me.
So
and
how
I
would
see
they overcome that?
Well, one is you have to be able to recognize it and be able to cope with it. Everybody gets a second win, but everybody doesn't panic when they need a second win. I think that in the gym, you have to simulate that kind of high level tension and sparring and be able to cope with it. You bring good sparring partners in and out in the gym. Like after maybe the 4th round, you'll bring a good sparring partner in. So you fighter who's been boxing 4 rounds already, he has to box somebody that's fresh, that's coming in, that's nice and sharp. So his mind has to cope with this sharp, good guy, and he has to be able to fight through this second win. If you could do it in the gym, you should be able to do it in the fight. And also, like I said, recognizing and understanding and trusting your condition and saying, I'm going to get my second win. There's no need to panic and get off fighting and go all over the place. Everything's going to be okay. I'm going to be okay with this. The second thing I see from a technical standpoint is guys take too big. Their steps are too big. So when you're in a boxing ring, you don't want your steps to be so big, because if your step is big, then that means that it's taking your foot a long time to get from point A to point B. Foot is off the ground for a longer time if your step is big. So when you're boxing, you want to take small steps. You want to kind of like shuffle around the ring. You want to be like moving small steps here. Sometimes guys go like this and they turn all the way around like that. You don't need to do all of that in the boxing ring, because at the end of the day, if you look at Usyk, look how small his steps are. They're really, really efficient. You know, his steps are no more than 12 or 18 inches. You got guys that take too big, their steps are just too big. And when you do that, there's a time in between where you can always get caught, because when you're stepping, your foot is in the air. You can't punch. So if you look at the guys with the best footwork, like a Usyk, like a Lomachenko, Shakur Stevenson, they take small, quick, efficient steps. They're not taking big steps all around the ring. They take small, quick, efficient steps to get from point A to point B, because they want to keep themselves in defensive, responsible position, and they want to keep themselves in punching position. And when you're taking these big steps all over the place, you're losing your punching position. Sometimes you're taking yourself out of punching position. You know, a glove is only but maybe this big. So there's no need to take these huge steps to avoid punches and get from certain places, when the one thing that you're avoiding is about this big. Small step here, small step there. You don't need big steps in the boxing ring.
Joe Lewis also comes to mind when you mentioned that. Maybe efficient. Yeah.
Perfect. Small little steps. He was always in punching position. And he's, in my opinion, he's still the best puncher to ever live, because he stayed in punching position. The whole time he's fighting, he's like this. And small little steps. Guys take too big steps, man.
Yeah.
He's the perfect example.
Yeah. I mean, we're almost running out of time. It's been over an hour. But I got a few quick hits, because I'm a similar age to yourself. I'm 43. So we probably watched some of the same TV growing up, or listened to the same music. So I want to ask you some questions back from the 80s and 90s and see whether yours think it was the same. So if you were to choose Public Enemy or NWA?
NWA.
Then Willis from Different Strokes or Theo from The Cosby Show?
Willis.
Randall Cunningham or Donovan McNabb?
Donovan McNabb.
Oh, why?
Oh, he won more. I think Cunningham was probably better, but Donovan McNabb took us to 5 NFC championships and the Super Bowl. We never got the one with Cunningham. And we had the team, we had the defense.
And you also shipped him off to Washington, and he didn't do too well with us.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
you got us there.
he was done by then, though.
Well, now we've got Carson Wentz, who's come from Philadelphia via Indianapolis. So I'm hoping history doesn't repeat itself.
Yeah, well, we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah. Okay. What do you prefer being called? Is it the Breadman or Coach Stephen?
It doesn't matter, man. A lot of times people call me Coach. You know, my friends call me Steve. A lot of my friends call me Brad, but it don't matter. It doesn't matter.
Okay. So I'll sign off by saying Coach then. It's been a real pleasure to finally get a chance to speak to you. I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to come speak to me as well. I'm sure we'll probably do it again in future. I'll let you go now. We'll do a lot more work for the rest of the day.
Thanks for having me, man. I really, really appreciate you. Thank you.
Pleasure's all be mine. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yep, you
Take
got
care,
it.
Coach. See ya.